My name is Allison, and I am 32 years old. I had been saving for years to buy my first home, pinching every penny while working overtime. When I finally found my dream house, I was over the moon excited about my independence. I never expected my parents would explode with rage because I had not consulted them first. What I discovered later shocked me to my core. They had already planned for my sister, her husband, and their 3 kids to move in with me. Before I tell you what happened, if you are watching, please let me know where you are from. In the comments, hit the like and subscribe buttons and share if you have ever had family members try to make decisions about your home without your permission. I grew up in a middle-class family in Portland. From the beginning, there was always a clear favorite in our household. My older sister, Samantha, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She was the golden child, always praised for her achievements, while mine were often overlooked or dismissed as expected. When Samantha brought home B grades, there was celebration. When I brought home straight A's, I got a quick nod and was told, "That is what we expect from you." This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Samantha got the bigger bedroom with the view of the garden. I got the smaller room next to the noisy bathroom. Samantha received new clothes while I wore her hand-me-downs, even though we were different sizes, and I always looked awkward in them. During the holidays, Samantha always seemed to get the more expensive, coveted gifts, while I received practical items like socks or school supplies. As we grew into adults, the favoritism persisted in new ways. My parents helped Samantha with the down payment on her first car. I took the bus until I saved enough money to buy a used vehicle on my own. They paid for Samantha to go to a prestigious private university, while informing me I would need scholarships and student loans to attend a state school. When Samantha met Greg in college, my parents welcomed him with open arms. They paid for a lavish wedding when the couple decided to get married just 6 months after meeting. Within a year of their marriage, Samantha and Greg had their first child, Jasmine. My parents were ecstatic about becoming grandparents. 2 years later, Lucas came along, followed by baby Emma just last year. Meanwhile, I focused on building my career. I earned my degree in accounting and started at an entry-level position at a financial firm. Through hard work and dedication, I was promoted to senior financial analyst. Each year, I put a portion of my paycheck into savings, dreaming of one day owning my own home. My one-bedroom apartment had become increasingly unbearable over the past year. The neighbors upstairs seemed to rearrange their furniture at midnight every other day. The couple next door had explosive arguments that I could hear through the thin walls. The rent increased annually, while the property management company ignored maintenance requests. I knew it was time to make a change. I spent 6 months house hunting. Each weekend was dedicated to viewing properties. I lost count of how many houses I toured. Some were too far from work. Others needed extensive renovations that would blow my budget. A few seemed promising until the inspection revealed hidden problems like foundation issues or outdated electrical systems. Throughout this process, my best friend Tara was my rock. She came with me to open houses, offering her honest opinions and keeping my spirits up when I felt discouraged. "The right house is out there waiting for you," she would say when I was ready to give up. "And when you find it, you will know immediately." Tara was right. When my realtor showed me the craftsman-style house on Maple Street, I felt an immediate connection. It had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a small backyard with mature trees. The previous owners had maintained it meticulously. It was slightly above my initial budget, but I ran the numbers and knew I could make it work with some adjustments to my spending. I never thought to consult my parents about this decision. I was 32 years old, financially independent, and had been making my own choices for years. Besides, they had always made it clear that I was expected to figure things out on my own. Why would this be any different? The craftsman house that captured my heart was painted a soft blue with white trim and had a welcoming front porch with enough space for a small sitting area. When my realtor Megan first pulled up to the curb, I tried not to get too excited. I had experienced disappointment before with houses that looked perfect from the outside, but revealed deal-breaking flaws once inside. "This one just came on the market yesterday," Megan explained as she unlocked the front door. "The owners are relocating for work and motivated to sell quickly." Stepping inside, I was greeted by hardwood floors that gleamed in the natural light streaming through large windows. The living room featured a brick fireplace with a wooden mantel. The dining area opened to a kitchen that had been updated with new appliances, while maintaining the original character of the home. "The owners renovated the kitchen 2 years ago," Megan said, noticing my appreciative gaze. "All new plumbing and electrical as well." As we toured the 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, I could already imagine how I would use each space. The largest bedroom would be mine, of course, the second could serve as my home office, and the third would be perfect for guests. Maybe Tara could stay over sometimes when we had our movie nights. The backyard sealed the deal. It wasn't enormous, but it had a patio area for outdoor dining, established flower beds, and a magnificent oak tree that provided shade and privacy. I could envision myself reading under that tree on summer weekends, or having small gatherings with friends around a fire pit. "What do you think?" Megan asked, though my expression probably already gave away my answer. "I love it," I admitted. "But is it really in my price range?" Megan showed me the comparable sales in the area and explained that the owner's motivation to sell quickly meant there was room for negotiation. We submitted an offer that same day, slightly below asking price, but with minimal contingencies to make it attractive to the sellers. To my delight, they accepted. Then began the whirlwind process of securing my mortgage. Despite my excellent credit score and the substantial down payment I had saved, the paperwork seemed endless. Each day brought new requests from the lender: additional bank statements, letters explaining deposits, employment verification. I spent my lunch break scanning and emailing documents, determined to keep the process moving forward. The home inspection revealed a few minor issues: some worn weather stripping around the doors, a dripping faucet in the guest bathroom gutters that needed cleaning. Nothing serious enough to reconsider my decision. The sellers agreed to fix the items before closing. Finally, closing day arrived. Sitting at a table surrounded by stacks of papers requiring my signature, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. When the closing agent handed me the keys, the reality hit me: I was a homeowner. That first night in my new house was surreal. After the movers left, I walked through each room, still unable to believe it was really mine. I had brought an air mattress to sleep on until my bedroom furniture was delivered later that week. Lying there in the quiet of my new bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and settling sounds of the house, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. I chose paint colors for each room, opting for a calming sage green in the bedroom, a warm taupe for the living areas, and a cheerful yellow for the kitchen. Tara helped me paint on weekends, our clothes spattered with color, as we laughed and planned where furniture would go. I set up my home office in the second bedroom, assembling a desk by the window that overlooked the backyard. The space was bright and inspiring, much better than the cramped corner of my apartment where I had previously worked from home on occasion. My neighborhood proved to be as wonderful as the house itself. The couple next door, James and David, brought over a houseplant as a welcome gift. Across the street, an elderly woman named Ruth invited me for tea and shared stories about the neighborhood's history. The family 2 doors down had children who offered to help water my garden when I mentioned I had never had plants before. I scheduled a housewarming party for the following month, wanting to wait until I was more settled. I invited colleagues from work, friends from my book club, Tara and her boyfriend, and a few of my new neighbors. I did not immediately invite my family, planning to call my parents first with the news once everything was finalized. When the house was mostly set up and I had adjusted to my new mortgage payments, I decided it was time to tell my parents. I had mentioned house hunting to them in passing months earlier, but they had shown little interest, so I hadn't brought it up again. Now, with everything complete, I was excited to share my accomplishment with them, perhaps even invite them for dinner to see the place. I called on a Sunday afternoon, assuming they would be home after church. "Mom, I have some exciting news to share," I said when she answered. "What is it, Allison?" she asked, her tone already wary, as if bracing for disappointment. "I bought a house I just finished moving in last week. It is a beautiful craftsman with 3 bedrooms in the Woodlawn neighborhood." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Mom, are you there?" "You bought a house?" She sounded incredulous. "Without telling us, let me get your father." I heard her calling for my dad, the phone muffled as if she had covered it with her hand. Then his voice came through, already raised in volume. "Allison, What is this about you buying a house without consulting us? Yes, Dad, I bought a house. I confirmed, confused by their reaction. I have been saving for years, and I found the perfect place. How could you make such an important decision without talking to your family first? He demanded, his voice rising with each word. I did not think I needed to, I answered honestly. I am 32 years old and it is my money. Typical selfish Allison, my mother chimed in from what sounded like an extension phone. Always thinking only about yourself, never considering the family. Their hostility blindsided me. I had expected congratulations, maybe some questions about the house, possibly even an offer to help with some remaining unpacking. Instead, I was being attacked as if I had committed some grave offense against the family. I do not understand why you are upset, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is good news. I thought you would be happy for me. Happy that you are wasting money on a house that is too big for just one person, my father scoffed. 3 bedrooms for just you. What an unnecessary expense. It was a good investment. I defended myself, and I can grow into the space. Maybe have a home office and a guest room. So now you are too good to visit your family, my mother asked. You need a dedicated guest room because coming to see us is beneath you, now that you are a homeowner. That is not what I said, Mom. I suppose you do not need your family anymore, now that you have your fancy new house, she continued, her voice taking on the passive-aggressive tone I knew all too well. You will be too busy with your new neighbors and work friends to bother with us. Mom, please, I pleaded. You are making assumptions that are not true. I would love for you to come see the house. We will discuss this later, my father interrupted. Your mother is very upset right now, and frankly, so am I. We need time to process this surprising news. Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat on my new couch phone, still in hand, completely bewildered by what had just transpired. Why were they so angry? Parents were supposed to be proud when their children achieved milestones like homeownership, weren't they? I immediately called Tara, needing to process what had happened. They completely freaked out, I told her after recounting the conversation. You would think I had announced I was joining a cult or something equally shocking. That is really strange, Tara agreed. Did they give any specific reason why they are upset besides the vague, not consulting them thing? No, just accusations about being selfish and not considering the family. My dad seemed fixated on the fact that the house has 3 bedrooms, calling it wasteful. That makes no sense, Tara said. Your parents have never been involved in your financial decisions before. Why would they expect to be consulted about this one? I have no idea. It came out of nowhere. Maybe they are jealous, Tara suggested. Or perhaps they had some expectation you would help them financially that you are unaware of. I guess I will find out eventually. I sighed. Dad said they need time to process, so I will give them space to cool down. Good idea. Meanwhile, want me to come over with wine and pizza tonight? We can hang that gallery wall in your living room that we have been planning. I gratefully accepted her offer, needing the distraction and support. As we spent the evening arranging and hanging framed photos and art pieces, I tried to push the unsettling conversation with my parents out of my mind. But their unexpected anger lingered, casting a shadow over what should have been an entirely joyful time in my life. A week passed with no contact from my parents, which was unusual. Despite our complicated relationship, we typically spoke at least once a week, with my mother calling to update me on family news and neighborhood gossip. The silence was both a relief and unsettling. Then on Saturday morning, my phone pinged with a text from my mother. Family dinner tomorrow at 5. Your father and I expect you to be there. No question, no, please join us. Just an expectation of obedience. I considered declining, but decided this might be an opportunity to clear the air. Perhaps after a week of reflection, they had realized their reaction was unreasonable and wanted to apologize. It was a hopeful thought, if not entirely convincing. I will be there, I texted back. Sunday evening arrived, and I pulled up to my parents' suburban 2-story house with a sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. I considered turning around and driving back to my peaceful new home, but I forced myself to get out of the car. Better to face whatever this was head on. The moment I walked through the front door, I sensed the tension. My mother greeted me with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes and a brief, stiff hug. You look tired, she commented, which was her typical opening remark whenever I visited. No matter how well rested and put together I appeared, she always found a way to suggest I looked unwell. "I am fine, Mom," I said. "Just busy with the new house. There is always something to do." "Hmm," was her only response as she led me to the living room, where my sister Samantha and her husband Greg were already seated. Samantha offered a small wave, looking uncomfortable. Greg nodded in my direction, but seemed unusually interested in the football game playing on the television. Their children were running through the house, Jasmine and Lucas chasing each other, while baby Emma toddled after them, squealing. "Kids, settle down!" Samantha called half-heartedly, but made no real attempt to contain their energy. My father entered from the kitchen, barely acknowledging my presence. "Dinner is almost ready. Samantha, get the kids washed up." The meal began in awkward silence, broken only by the clattering of utensils and occasional requests to pass dishes. My mother had prepared a roast with potatoes and vegetables, a typical Sunday dinner. I complimented the food, trying to ease the obvious tension. "Allison," my mother finally said as she cut her meat into precise pieces, "how is your big empty house?" "It is not empty," I replied, keeping my tone light despite the passive aggression. "I have furnished it quite nicely. You should come see it sometime." "3 bedrooms," my father muttered, shaking his head as if I had committed some egregious financial sin. "For one person." I took a deep breath. "As I mentioned before, I have set up a home office in 1 bedroom, which is really useful since I work from home 2 days a week now, and the guest room has already come in handy when Tara stayed over last weekend." "Tara," my mother said with a dismissive wave. "That girl has always encouraged your independent streak." Independent streak, as if my desire for autonomy was some sort of character flaw that needed correcting. The conversation shifted to Samantha's children, with my parents cooing over how Lucas had learned to write his name and how Jasmine was excelling at dance class. Emma banged her spoon on the high chair tray, sending mashed potatoes flying onto the dining room wall. No one seemed to notice, except me. When my mother brought out dessert, an apple pie with ice cream, my father cleared his throat in the way he always did, before making what he considered an important proclamation. "Allison, your mother and I have been very disappointed in your recent decision-making." Here it comes, I thought. "Buying a house without consulting family shows a disturbing lack of consideration for others," he continued, "especially given the current situation." "What situation?" I asked, genuinely confused. My parents exchanged glances with Samantha and Greg, who suddenly seemed intensely interested in their pie. "Should we tell her?" my mother asked my father, as if I was not sitting right there. "She needs to understand the consequences of her actions," he replied. My mother turned to me with a look of righteous indignation. "We had planned for Samantha, Greg, and the children to move in with you." I nearly choked on my pie. "What?" "Greg lost his job 3 months ago," Samantha said quietly, speaking up for the first time. "The company downsized his entire department." "I am sorry to hear that," I said sincerely, looking at Greg, who was still avoiding eye contact. "But what does that have to do with my house?" "They have been struggling to make rent," my mother explained. "Your father and I thought the perfect solution would be for them to live with you. You are single, working all the time, and now apparently have a 3-bedroom house. It makes perfect sense for them to occupy the space you are not using." I looked around the table in disbelief. "And no one thought to discuss this with me before I bought the house, or even after?" "We assumed you would consult us before making such a big purchase," my father said. "Any considerate daughter would have. We have already given notice on our apartment," Samantha added, finally meeting my eyes. "We need to be out by the end of the month." The pieces suddenly clicked together. My parents had not been angry because I bought a house without telling them. They were angry because I had unknowingly derailed their plan to solve Samantha's housing problems by volunteering my home and resources without my knowledge or consent. "So you are telling me," I said slowly, "that you made plans for 5 people to move into a house that I had not even purchased yet, without ever asking me if that was okay." "Family helps family," my mother stated, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Samantha would do the same for you." "Would she?" I challenged, looking directly at my sister. "Would you give up your home for me, Samantha?" She squirmed in her seat. "That is different. You do not have children." No, I do not. I have a life and career that I have built entirely on my own, without the financial support that you have always received from mom and dad. I have worked incredibly hard for my house, and I have the right to enjoy it. So selfish, my father muttered. Selfish, I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. How is it selfish to expect to live in the house that I purchased with my own money? How is it selfish to not want to suddenly become responsible for housing my sister's entire family? They are your nieces and nephew, my mother interjected. Do not tell me you do not care about them. Of course I care about them, but that does not mean I am prepared to have 3 children and 2 adults move into the home I just bought. That is not a reasonable expectation. You and your reasonableness, my father scoffed, always so cold and calculating. This is about family, Allison, something you clearly do not value. That was the breaking point. I stood up from the table, hands shaking with anger and hurt. I value family that respects boundaries and does not make presumptions about my resources. I value family that supports my achievements instead of seeing them only as opportunities for what they can get from me. I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair. Allison, sit down, my father ordered. We are not finished discussing this. Yes, we are, I said firmly. I will not give up my house for anyone, especially not when you all went behind my back to make these plans. You should have asked me directly if I could help instead of assuming I would just hand over the keys to my new home. After everything we have done for you, my mother said, tears welling in her eyes. I recognized the calculated emotional display, having seen it deployed countless times when she did not get her way. What exactly have you done for me? I asked. I put myself through college. I bought my own car. I built my own career. I saved for my own house. Meanwhile, you gave Samantha everything. I turned to leave, but paused at the dining room doorway and looked back at my family. Samantha looked embarrassed. Greg angry, my parents outraged. I am sorry that Greg lost his job. Truly I am. But my house is not the solution to your problems. With that, I walked out the door, tears streaming down my face as I drove away from my childhood home, feeling both liberated and heartbroken. The days following the disastrous family dinner brought a barrage of communication from various family members. My phone buzzed constantly with texts, calls, and voicemails, all aimed at making me reconsider my position. My mother called hourly for the first day, leaving increasingly emotional messages. How could you leave your sister homeless with 3 innocent children? After all the time Samantha included you in her life, this is how you repay her. I raised you better than this, Allison. I did not raise a selfish daughter who turns her back on family. I eventually muted her number, unable to handle the emotional manipulation. My father took a different approach, sending terse texts that read more like commands than requests. Call your mother. She is distraught. Family meeting tomorrow. Be here at 6. This situation requires your immediate reconsideration. I did not respond to these, either needing time and space to process the entire situation. Then the extended family got involved. My mother's sister, Aunt Jennifer, called me at work. Allison, it is your Aunt Jennifer. I need to speak with you about the situation with your sister. I stepped away from my desk to take the call privately. Hi, Aunt Jennifer. I am actually at work right now. This will only take a minute. Your mother called me very upset about how you are refusing to help Samantha and those precious children. I sighed, already knowing how this conversation would go. That is not exactly what happened. Family helps family, Allison. When my washing machine broke down in 1992, your mother let me use hers for 6 months. That is what sisters do for each other. Aunt Jennifer, using a washing machine occasionally is very different from having 5 people move into my new house. I raised 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment when times were tough, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. You have 3 bedrooms all to yourself. It seems very selfish. The conversation went in circles with Aunt Jennifer, bringing up various instances of family assistance throughout the years, none of which remotely compared to what my parents expected of me. The next day, my Uncle Paul showed up at my workplace unannounced. I was in a meeting when the receptionist came in to whisper that my uncle was in the lobby, insisting on speaking with me about an urgent family matter. Mortified, I excused myself and went to the lobby, where Uncle Paul stood with his arms crossed, looking stern. Uncle Paul, what are you doing here? I asked, acutely aware of my colleagues who could see us through the glass walls of the conference rooms. "Your parents are beside themselves, young lady," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet lobby. "Your sister is facing a crisis, and you are acting like it has nothing to do with you." "This is my workplace," I said as quietly and firmly as I could. "This is completely inappropriate. Please leave before I have to call security." His eyebrows shot up. "You would call security on your own uncle. What has happened to you, Allison?" I managed to convince him to leave, but not before several coworkers witnessed the uncomfortable exchange. I returned to my meeting flushed with embarrassment, finding it difficult to focus on the quarterly projections being discussed. The most difficult calls came from Samantha. Unlike my parents' angry demands or my extended family's lectures, Samantha's approach was pure emotional manipulation. "Allie," she said, using my childhood nickname that she knew I had a soft spot for. "The kids keep asking where we are going to live. Jasmine cried last night because she is scared we will have to live on the street." "Samantha, you know that is not going to happen," I replied. "Mom and Dad would never let that happen. They have offered to let us stay with them, but you know their house is too small for all of us. Dad's knees are bad, and having to climb the stairs to the guest room would be so hard on him." Each conversation with Samantha followed the same pattern. Tearful pleas, mentions of the children's distress, and subtle suggestions that I was causing harm to my nieces and nephew by not opening my home to them. The pressure campaign extended to social media, where my mother began posting cryptic statements clearly aimed at me. "Heartbroken today thinking about how some people put material possessions above family bonds. Praying for those who have hardened their hearts against family in need." These posts received comments from distant relatives and family friends asking what was wrong, giving my mother the opportunity to vaguely explain the situation in a way that painted me as the villain. My cousins took sides. Some messaged me privately expressing support for my position, understanding the unreasonableness of my parents' expectations. Others joined the chorus of family members telling me I was selfish and uncaring. My grandmother, who rarely got involved in family disputes, called one evening. Her age-wavered voice carried the weight of traditional values that put family obligations above all else. "Allison and my day family stuck together no matter what. Your grandfather and I took in his brother and his wife for 2 years when they lost their farm. It was what was expected." "Grandma, I love you, but times are different now. My house is not large enough for 5 additional people to live comfortably. It would be a disaster for everyone." "Sometimes discomfort is necessary when family needs help," she replied. "Think about what matters most in life, dear." The stress began affecting my work performance. I found it difficult to concentrate on financial analyses when my phone constantly lit up with family messages. I missed a deadline for an important report, something that had never happened before in my career. My boss, Teresa, called me into her office after the missed deadline. "Allison, is everything okay? This is not like you." I hesitated, not wanting to bring personal drama into my professional life, but also needing someone to understand the pressure I was under. "I am dealing with some family issues," I admitted. "I am sorry it affected my work. It will not happen again." Teresa's expression softened. "Do you need to take a few personal days? Sometimes stepping back can help clear your head." I gratefully accepted her offer, taking 3 days off to try to regain my equilibrium. During this time, I barely slept, constantly turning over the situation in my mind, questioning whether I was indeed being selfish, wondering if there was a compromise that could work. Tara, seeing my deteriorating mental state, suggested I speak with a therapist. "This is too much for you to handle alone, Allie. A professional could help you sort through all of this and establish healthy boundaries." She sent me the contact information for Dr. Marshall, a therapist she had seen during her parents' divorce. I made an appointment for the following day, desperate for an objective perspective on the situation. Dr. Marshall's office was a calming space with soft lighting and comfortable furniture. As I explained the situation to her from my lifelong position as the less favored child to the current housing crisis, she listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "It sounds like this situation has brought up many long-standing family dynamics," she observed when I had finished. "How are you feeling about all of this?" "Guilty," I admitted, "but also angry. I worked so hard for my house and now I am being made to feel like a terrible person for wanting to live in it myself." Those feelings are completely valid, she assured me. What your family is asking goes well beyond normal expectations of support. Our session helped me begin to see the situation more clearly, but the real test of my resolve was yet to come. 2 weeks after the confrontational family dinner, I was enjoying a rare, peaceful Saturday morning in my new home. The kitchen renovation project I had started was coming along nicely with the cabinet doors I had been painting now dry and ready to be rehung. I was on my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang insistently, followed by loud knocking. Puzzled and slightly alarmed by the aggressive nature of the knocking, I approached the front door cautiously and looked through the peephole. To my shock, Samantha, Greg, and all 3 children stood on my porch. Behind them, I could see a rented moving truck parked in my driveway. Luggage and boxes were piled next to them. My heart racing, I opened the door but blocked the entrance with my body. "Samantha, what is going on?" "We are here," she said, attempting a bright smile that did not mask the determination in her eyes. "The landlord changed the locks this morning when we were not fully moved out. We had nowhere else to go." Greg stood slightly behind her, holding Emma, while Jasmine and Lucas peered around their parents at their aunt's new house. "Can we use your bathroom?" Jasmine asked. "I really need to go." Before I could respond, Samantha nudged her daughter forward. "Of course you can, honey. Auntie Allison will show you where it is." I reluctantly stepped back to let Jasmine in, but held my ground when the rest of the family tried to follow. "Samantha, we need to talk. Alone." "The kids are tired and hungry," she protested. "Let us get them settled first, then we can talk." "No," I said firmly. "You cannot just show up at my house with all your belongings and expect to move in. That is not happening." Greg stepped forward, then his expression hardening. "Look, we have nowhere else to go. Your parents said this was arranged." "Nothing was arranged," I replied, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I have been clear from the beginning that this would not work." "So you are going to turn away your own flesh and blood?" Greg demanded, his voice loud enough that I noticed my neighbor Ruth peeking through her curtains across the street. "You would leave children homeless." "Do not try to guilt me," I said. "You have options. My parents offered their house." "That is not practical and you know it," Samantha interjected. "Dad's knees the stairs not enough room." "That is not my problem to solve," I insisted. "I am sorry about your situation, but you cannot live here." Greg took a step forward, moving into my personal space. "We are coming in. You can either make this easy or difficult." His tone and posture made me feel genuinely threatened. I stepped back and reached for my phone. "If you do not leave right now, I am calling the police." "You would call the cops on your own sister," Samantha gasped dramatically. "On your nieces and nephew?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself with my resolve. "This is my home and you are trying to force your way in. That is trespassing." Jasmine returned from the bathroom looking confused by the tension she walked into. Lucas had started to cry, picking up on the adult's anger. "I am going to count to 3, I said. "If you are not off my porch by then, I am calling 911. "You cannot be serious," Greg scoffed. 1. "Allison, please," Samantha pleaded. 2. Greg shook his head in disgust, but took a step back. 3. When they remained on my porch, I dialed 911 and reported that people were trying to force their way into my home. Samantha burst into tears, clutching Lucas, while Greg paced angrily on the porch. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up. Officer Williams approached the scene cautiously, taking in the moving truck, the luggage, and the standoff at the door. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, while Samantha interjected with her version of events, emphasizing the children and their lack of housing. Officer Williams listened to both sides before addressing Greg, who had become increasingly agitated. "Sir, I need you to calm down and step back," he said firmly. "This is a family matter," Greg insisted. "The police should not be involved." "When someone reports people trying to enter their home against their wishes, it becomes a police matter," Officer Williams explained patiently. "Now, from what I understand, this is Miss Johnston's home purchased in her name alone, correct?" I nodded. "And there was no formal agreement for you and your family to live here?" he asked Samantha. "It was understood," Samantha insisted. "Family helps family. Without a lease or written agreement, and with the homeowner clearly stating you do not have permission to stay here, you will need to leave the premises," Officer Williams stated. "And go where?" Greg demanded. That is not Miss Johnston's responsibility to determine, the officer replied. I suggest you contact other family members or friends, or I can provide information on emergency housing services. As this confrontation unfolded, a second vehicle pulled into my driveway. My parents had arrived, likely called by Samantha. My father stormed up the walkway, face red with anger. What is going on here? Why is there a police car? Sir, please stay back, Officer Williams instructed. My mother rushed to Samantha, embracing her and the children. Oh, my poor babies, what has she done now? Ma'am, I need everyone to remain calm, the officer said. This is a straightforward situation. Your daughter Allison owns this home and does not consent to these individuals moving in. They need to leave. This is outrageous, my father shouted, pointing at me. You would call the police on your own family after everything we have done for you. The neighbors were no longer hiding their interest in the drama unfolding. Several had come outside, ostensibly to check their mail or water plants while watching the scene. My mother began to cry loudly, creating a spectacle. My own daughter treating us this way. I never thought I would see the day when my child would turn her back on family. Officer Williams maintained his professional demeanor despite the escalating emotions. I understand this is a difficult family situation, but legally the matter is clear. I need everyone except Miss Johnston to return to their vehicles and leave the property. Greg finally relented, ushering Jasmine and Lucas back toward the moving truck. Samantha followed reluctantly, still crying with Emma on her hip. My father, however, approached me directly, his finger pointing in my face. You are no daughter of mine, not anymore. Sir, step back now, Officer Williams warned, moving between us. We raised you better than this. My father continued, ignoring the officer. This is how you repay our sacrifices, by humiliating your family in front of the entire neighborhood. You need to leave now, sir, Officer Williams insisted more forcefully. Eventually, my father backed down and returned to the car. My mother gave me one last tearful, accusatory look before joining him. They followed the moving truck as it pulled away from my house. Officer Williams turned to me once they had left. Are you all right, Miss Johnston? I nodded, though I felt anything but all right. Thank you for your help. Family disputes can be the most difficult, he said sympathetically. Given the nature of this confrontation, you might want to consider a restraining order if you feel threatened. After he left, I went inside and collapsed on my couch, shaking from the adrenaline and emotion of the confrontation. I called Tara, who came over immediately. I cannot believe they just showed up expecting to move in, she said as I recounted what had happened. And bringing the kids as emotional leverage, that is low. Greg scared me, I admitted. The way he tried to intimidate me into letting them in. I never thought I would have to call the police on my own family. You did the right thing, Tara assured me. They were trying to steamroll you. The next day, I contacted Sarah, an attorney. A colleague had recommended to discuss legal protections. She advised me on the restraining order process, though I was hesitant to take such a drastic step against my family. At minimum, Sarah suggested, document everything. Save texts, emails, voicemails. If the harassment continues or there are any further attempts to enter your home uninvited, you will have evidence to support legal action. I took her advice and also took practical steps to secure my home. I installed a security system with cameras covering all entrances. I changed the locks, even though I had only recently moved in, just in case my parents somehow had obtained a key without my knowledge. My sessions with Dr. Marshall intensified as we worked through not only the current crisis, but the long-standing family dynamics that had led to it. We discussed my position as the family scapegoat, always expected to sacrifice for Samantha's needs while receiving little support for my own. What this situation has revealed, Dr. Marshall observed during one particularly insightful session, is that your role in your family system has always been to accommodate others at the expense of your own needs and boundaries. The purchase of your house represents a significant step toward individuation and autonomy, which threatens the established dynamic. So their extreme reaction is because I am changing the rules of our relationship, I asked. Precisely. Systems resist change, even dysfunctional ones. By asserting your boundaries so clearly, you have disrupted the pattern they are comfortable with, regardless of how unhealthy it is for you. These insights help me understand the situation more clearly. but they did not ease the pain of what increasingly looked like a permanent rift with my family. After careful consideration and several more therapy sessions, I made the difficult decision to temporarily cut contact with my parents and Samantha. I wrote a detailed letter explaining my boundaries and the conditions under which I would consider reestablishing communication. I need time and space to heal from these events, I wrote. I cannot be in contact with people who do not respect my boundaries and who believe they have the right to make decisions about my home and resources without my consent. I love you all, but I need to love myself enough to protect my own well-being. I sent copies to my parents and Samantha, then blocked their numbers on my phone. The relief I felt after taking this step confirmed it was the right decision, though it was tinged with sadness for the relationship I wished we could have had. During this difficult time, I found unexpected support from my new neighbors. Ruth brought over homemade soup and bread. James and David invited me to their backyard barbecue, introducing me to other neighbors and helping me feel part of the community. Colleagues at work rallied around me, with my boss Teresa continuing to show understanding when I occasionally needed flexibility. Tara was my rock throughout, sometimes staying over for several days at a time when I felt particularly vulnerable. The guest room that my family had tried to claim was instead filled with the supportive presence of my chosen family people, who respected my boundaries and celebrated my achievements without expecting to benefit from them. 6 months after the confrontation on my front porch, my life had settled into a new normal. The initial raw pain of family estrangement had dulled to an occasional ache that flared up during holidays, or when I saw parents and children shopping together at the grocery store. But mostly, I had found peace in my decision to maintain distance from my family of origin. My house had truly become my home. I had finished painting all the rooms, planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, and even adopted a cat named Milo from the local shelter. Each morning, I enjoyed coffee on my front porch, waving to neighbors as they left for work or school. Each evening, I cooked dinner in my kitchen, sometimes for myself, sometimes for friends who came over regularly. My career had advanced, with Teresa recommending me for a promotion to financial team manager. The new role came with more responsibility, but also more flexibility and better pay. I used some of the increase in salary to take a pottery class at the community center, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. Through mutual friends, I learned that Samantha, Greg, and the children had indeed moved in with my parents. Greg had found a new job, though, at a significantly lower salary than his previous position. They were supposedly looking for an apartment of their own, but the search did not seem particularly urgent from what I heard. Although I had cut direct contact with my immediate family, I maintained relationships with a few cousins who respected my boundaries. Through them, I occasionally arranged to see my nieces and nephew. These visits took place on neutral ground, usually at a park or child-friendly restaurant, without my parents or Samantha present. I treasured these opportunities to maintain a connection with the children who were innocent in the adult conflicts. My therapy with Dr. Marshall continued, though we had reduced the frequency of sessions from weekly to bi-weekly. Much of our work now focused on processing the grief of family estrangement and building new, healthier relationships. Estrangement is not always a failure, Dr. Marshall told me during one session. Sometimes it is a necessary step toward health and wholeness. The question to ask is not how can I fix my family, but rather, how can I create a life that honors my needs and values? I had also joined a support group for adults navigating family estrangement. Hearing others' stories helped me recognize that my experience, while painful, was not unique. Many group members had been forced to create distance from toxic family dynamics in order to preserve their mental health. Through a book club I had joined, I met Patrick, a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. Our friendship gradually evolved into cautious dating, with both of us taking things slowly. Patrick had his own complicated family history and understood my need for clear boundaries. He never pressured me to reconcile with my parents or suggested I was overreacting responses I had received from previous romantic interests. One unexpected development came in the form of a letter from Samantha delivered to my office rather than my home about 5 months after the confrontation. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," she wrote. While I still wish things had worked out differently with the housing situation, I recognize now that it was unfair to expect you to take us in, especially without discussing it with you first. Mom and Dad should never have made those assumptions or promises on your behalf. She went on to describe how living with our parents had been both a blessing and a challenge. Dad's controlling nature is more obvious to me now that I am back under his roof with my own children. I am starting to understand some of what you experienced growing up. The letter concluded with a tentative request to reestablish some form of communication on my terms and timeline. I miss my sister. The kids miss their aunt. Whatever boundaries you need, I will respect them. I did not immediately respond, taking time to process the letter with Dr. Marshall and consider what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with Samantha going forward. Her acknowledgement of the unfairness was a start, but years of unbalanced family dynamics would not be resolved with one letter. Interestingly, my parents had made overtures toward reconciliation as well, though their approaches revealed they had not truly accepted my perspective. My father sent a birthday card that included the line, "We are ready to forgive you when you are ready to apologize." My mother left a voicemail through a cousin's phone suggesting we put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us for the sake of family unity. Neither of them acknowledged the fundamental issue, their disregard for my boundaries and autonomy. Until they could recognize and respect that I had the right to make my own decisions about my home, and resources' genuine reconciliation seemed unlikely. Through all of this, I came to a profound realization about the nature of family. True family, I discovered, consists of people who support your growth and respect your boundaries, whether they are related to you by blood or by choice. My neighbor Ruth, who checked on me daily during those first difficult weeks. My boss Teresa, who gave me the space and flexibility I needed to heal. Tara, who stood by me without judgment. These people had become my family in the ways that mattered most. I also realized that cutting ties, while painful, had been necessary for my own health and growth. The constant guilt manipulation and boundary violations had been slowly suffocating me throughout my life. Standing firm against the pressure to sacrifice my needs for others had been an act of self-preservation, not selfishness as my parents had claimed. As I sat on my porch swing one evening, watching the sunset with Milo purring in my lap, I reflected on how far I had come. The house that had sparked such conflict had become a sanctuary, a physical manifestation of my right to create a life that honored my own needs and values. I did not know what the future held regarding my family relationships. Perhaps with time and clear boundaries, some form of limited contact might become possible. Perhaps not. What I did know was that I would never again allow anyone to make me feel guilty for claiming what was rightfully mine, not just a house, but the right to determine how I lived my life and who I welcomed into it. Family is important, yes, but family should lift you up, not tear you down. Family should celebrate your achievements, not try to exploit them. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to recognize when relationships have become too toxic to maintain. I stroked Milo's soft fur and smiled. "We are going to be just fine," I told him. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who felt entitled to your resources or space? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, creating healthy boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for a fulfilling life,